All right, and we should be live. I see Wills is here. Wills, love seeing all your comments all the time. Uh, I know you're a fervent follower, so this is awesome to see you here. And we'll wait a few more minutes for more people to join in, and then we'll be able to get started. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to get your FAA Part 107 certificate, how to do this legally, and just a whole lot of information. And at the end, there's always a ton of questions when we do these kind of webinars. So this time I actually left quite a bit of time at the end so I can answer questions. We always kind of run out of time to answer and help everybody. So we'll keep doing that. And Will said the Drone Safety Week has been some great panels to watch. Awesome. Yeah, this is always a great event every week, well, every year for a week, where we get to kind of share information with people. This is what we do year long, so this is really no different from us. Something that we enjoy doing is educating the public on a lot of different things related to drones. I see always a lot of questions. We recently, actually, the most common questions I've been seeing recently has to be with the Mini 2 that just came out. And just like when the Mini came out the first time, people are a little bit confused in the US on how you can actually do this and how you can actually fly safely and legally using the Mini. And so I'll talk a little bit about this during the presentation, but really the only thing, the bottom line is the only thing the Mini saves you in the US is $5 on registration. You still have to follow all the rules. You still have to make sure that you don't fly over people, make sure you don't fly beyond visual line of sight. You still need approval to fly in controlled airspace. Really, the only thing is you don't have to register it as a hobbyist. You still have to register it as a remote pilot, a commercial pilot, which is what we'll talk about today. So all these things are pretty important. So, well, we have people online, so we'll get started. If you want to just leave me a comment, tell me kind of where you're from, maybe, and so I get an idea. And if you're a Part 107 already or not, hopefully you're not, so I can give you some information. If you are, hopefully I can also give you some additional information. But I have a presentation, so I'm going to start it in the background here, and then we'll start talking. So here's the information about the drone flying. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit so that you guys can see. I want to be able to continue seeing your comments, so we're going to do this a little bit differently here than I typically do. I think you guys can all read this and see my face at the same time, so we'll just go from one slide to the next doing this, and it will make it a little bit easier for me to read all the comments. Yeah, Jake's is here. Jake's Drone Life, awesome. He's a hobbyist from Louisville, Kentucky. So we'll be hopefully giving you some information, Jake. So let's talk about what it takes to become a remote pilot. And you'll hear me say a lot of different terms. I'm going to kind of clarify in a second what all these terms are and what you should be looking for when it gets confusing because people use different terms for different things with the drone flying. So the remote pilot certificate. So we'll be using different things in here. So let's get started about what we're going to learn in here. We're going to learn the difference between flying a drone for fun or flying it commercially, not as a hobbyist. And then we're going to talk also about what it takes to become a commercial drone pilot. This is kind of the questions that we get on a daily basis at Pilot Institute is, how do I make this happen? How does this work? And then I'll give you some time to answer your questions. I know some of this stuff is a little bit confusing, so we'll keep a big chunk of time at the very end. But anytime you have a question, leave it in the comment. I can see the comments right here on the side of my screen. And we have Mike. Hey, Mike. Mike is always the first time guy when we go and post a video. So good to see you here, Mike. So who is this not for? This is not a study course. I'm not going to teach you how to become a commercial pilot and giving you the knowledge. This is what we do in our course. And then if you're already certified, if you already have a job flying a drone, this is probably not the best thing for you, but maybe you'll pick up on some information. A little bit more about myself. I'm the owner and the lead instructor for Pilot Institute. At the moment, I just checked the numbers this morning. We just passed 45,000 students this morning. So 45,000 students, and then we have almost 61,000 course enrollment. Again, as of this morning. This just means that we have some students that enroll in more than one course for Pilot Institute, which is pretty awesome. We have my background, certified flight instructor. I'm a commercial pilot for airplanes, single and multi-engine. I'm also obviously a remote pilot. I've been pretty much since day one that this certificate came out. And I've got over 20 years of experience in the flight training industry. This is what I do. This is what I love doing. Not only what I do, but what I love doing. And I'm also a university professor. I have a master's degree in aviation human factors from Florida Institute of Technology, or Florida Tech as it's called today. I like to call it the old one, which is FIT. A lot of people, if you went to FIT, you know what I'm talking about. How do we organize the licenses with the FAA? There's really two main sides. Now, if you are very familiar with this, you know there's one more which is for a public safety operation, but I'm not really going to talk about public safety operations here. But you can fly either as a recreational pilot, what I call and a lot of people call hobbyist, or you can fly as a commercial pilot. It's really not really a commercial pilot, the real name is remote pilot, but because of the type of operation, we're going to refer to it as commercial operations. The remote pilot certificate in itself is going to be what we call the Part 107 license. And the reason we call it Part 107 is because the regulation around all of this is located in 14 CFR Part 107. So you'll hear a lot of people say, do you have your Part 107? Really what they mean is, do you have your remote pilot certificate? And it comes in the form of a card. Actually, I should have taken it with me. It's really just, it's just the size of a, maybe I have it in one of my drawers right here in my desk. I don't, unfortunately. I should have done that. It comes in the size of a credit card. Really, it's the size of a credit card. It's kind of a blue-greenish color, kind of like the logo of the FAA. And that's going to be your certificate right here. And it allows you to fly your drone for commercial purposes. A lot of people ask, is it valid anywhere in the US? And yes, it is. This is a federal certificate, so it's valid anywhere in the US. And you'll hear me say certificate and license. Some people cringe at this. I've been in this industry long enough that I know the FAA actually uses the term certificate and the term license kind of all together. In theory, if you want to be correct, it is a certificate. This is what it says on your certificate in the back of it. But you'll hear a lot of people say license as well. That same thing, really, quite frankly, I'm not all that picky, so you'll hear me say both of the terms. Some people call it the drone pilot, a commercial drone pilot license. So if you hear commercial drone pilot license, same thing as the Part 107 license, same thing as the actual technical word, which is remote pilot certificate. In terms of when do you need it, and this is kind of, oh, Jake is asking a question. I'll stop right here because that's a good question. Does it carry weight in Canada? It does not. Canada has their own set of regulation. You need to actually be a resident of Canada in order to do this. Now, if you have a job here and there to do in Canada, they do have a process where you can, I'm not going to call it transfer your certificate, but they'll give you approval to fly in there, fly in Canada. But if you want to do it for the long time, for a longer period of time, then you'll need to get the certificate with the Canadian authority. It's a little bit different. They have an exam that you have to take in person, which we don't have in the US. So a slightly different requirement. They have what's called a basic and an advanced certificate. The basic one is just if you fly outside of controlled airspace, and then if you fly in busier airspace, then you need to have the advanced certificate. So can you fly your Mini 2 in Canada? I think in Canada, and I want you to verify this because I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think in Canada the Mini 2 actually does not require a certificate. But again, not 100% on this. I know there are some places where the Mini 2 has different rules, and I'm pretty sure I've seen on forums, I've seen people say that it bypasses the regulation in Canada. So definitely something to look into to make sure that what I just said is correct. when do you need a certificate? This is a question that we get pretty much every single day, that I see on forums all the time. And the short answer really is this. If you're not flying for recreational purposes, if you're not flying for fun, then you do need to have a remote pilot certificate. I kind of want you to imagine that the remote pilot certificate is required for everything except if you're flying for fun. That's kind of the way to look at it. So it's really an exception if you're flying for fun, and there's an exception with different rules. Otherwise, you have to follow Part 107 regulation. If you're collecting money, you definitely need to have a Part 107. But if you also work for a non-profit organization, you still need to have a Part 107. So the fact that you're collecting money or not doesn't really matter to the FAA. And they've been pretty clear on this from day one. They've said, hey, it doesn't really matter. The intent of the flight is really what matters. So if you go out and you say, I'm just going to go out to just fly my drone, then it falls under Hobbyist. Then you can follow that regulation. Otherwise, it's going to take a Part 107 certificate. Here's some examples that we kind of hear all the time. I'm a realtor. I do pictures for my own listing. Yes, you do need a certificate. This is not flying for fun. As fun as it may be, it's not flying for fun. I'm doing pictures for free for my church. It doesn't matter if it's for free or not. In this case, because you're doing it for somebody else, the intent is not to go fly as a hobbyist. So yes, you do need a Part 107 certificate in this case. This one is actually coming from one of the FAA webinar that I attended one time. And it says, I'm checking the gutters at my grandma's house or even at your own house. And actually, in this case, the FAA says, yeah, because you're technically using the drone for something that is not purely for recreational purposes, so you would need a Part 107 certificate. I always put this one in here because I think it makes people chuckle. It makes me chuckle a little bit because it's really taking it to a pretty deep intent right here, but it is what it is. I'm doing a video for my friend's business to practice. This is also an example of flying not for fun. You're doing it for somebody else. It's obviously for commercial purposes, so you would need a certificate in this case. The repercussions. I talk about this because people say, well, what if I just go fly and do it? Nobody's ever going to know. Yes and no. Nobody's going to know as long as nothing happens. Let's put it this way. The FAA can issue fines, so you can be fined for a certain amount if you don't have the proper paperwork, or they can actually prevent you from getting a pilot certificate in the future. The biggest thing with not having a certificate and flying for commercial purposes is your insurance is not going to cover anything. You're a realtor, you decide that you're just going to fly without a certificate, you crash into the house, and then all of a sudden the homeowner comes and sues you. And then your insurance is going to say, ain't going to happen. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're flying for your church and the drone crashes in the parking lot and then breaks a windshield, then your insurance is not going to cover it because technically you weren't flying for fun. So there are just things to keep in mind. It's not a very expensive process to get the certificate. Just go through it and do it. This is really, from a risk management standpoint, I think it just makes sense. And Mike is a longtime viewer as well. I know you comment on our videos a lot. It says the gutter one is ridiculous. Yes, it is indeed a little bit ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about, this is something that I also try to explain to people quite a bit, is what is really the difference between flying as a hobbyist and flying as a commercial pilot. Obviously, you're flying as a commercial pilot, you can fly for commercial purposes. That's kind of a given. But in terms of the regulation that everyone has to follow, that is common to hobbyist and commercial pilot, you have to stay below 400 feet above ground level. We call it AGL. So whenever the terrain changes, you have to keep 400 feet above the terrain, no more than 400 feet. You can't fly over people. Well, there are some exceptions for Part 107, but in general, if you don't have the waivers, don't fly over people. You have to fly within line of sight. And I get this a lot from people when they take my course and they say, well, I see videos online all the time about people doing the range test and about people doing this and that, and they're obviously flying beyond visual line of sight. And how do they do it? Well, the reason, the answer is it's illegal. They do it illegally. And you're going to say, why don't they get caught? They don't get caught because the FAA doesn't really have enough information typically to pursue this kind of activity. Does that mean that you can get away with it? Maybe. Is it something that you should be doing? Probably not. Okay. This is I'm trying to make this as educational as possible, but at the end of the day, this is something that if something happens, then we all suffer the consequences, and it's just don't do it. Okay. Something that's common to everyone: if you're going to fly in controlled airspace, then you need to get approved for your flight. There's a way to do it using LAANC, L-A-A, no, let me say that again, L-A-A-N-C, LAANC. And LAANC is going to be a very quick process. You can use your cell phone, you can download an app such as Kitty Hawk, for example, and then Kitty Hawk will allow you to submit a flight request for a specific area. This is only when you're near an airport. So every time you fly, just go into Kitty Hawk, make sure that nothing is going on around you, submit a request if you're in a controlled airspace, and then you'll get it within 10 seconds, literally. It sends you a text message, it says you're ready to go, and this is something you can do as a hobbyist or you can do as a commercial pilot. Mike says he uses spotters to do range tests. That's a good idea. Just remember, at all time, you still have to maintain visual line of sight, even if you have spotters. So they can't really be all that far. You can daisy chain stuff when you do these visual range or range tests. Some things that remote pilots can that only remote pilots can do. Fly in controlled airspace at night. Now, there's something really interesting with Hobbyist, and I'll talk about it in a second when we talk about night. But as a remote pilot under Part 107, you can fly in controlled airspace at night. You cannot do that as a hobbyist. You can fly above certain altitude in controlled airspace. So if you go to the LAANC map and you notice that you can only fly up to 200 feet, you can actually try to request to fly higher than 200 feet, maybe 300, 400. That takes a special approval, but only remote pilots can do that. So if you're a hobbyist, you can't. You're stuck at 200 feet basically in that area. And then you can fly for commercial purposes. In terms of the hobbyist, there's one thing that is easier to do as a hobbyist, which to me still doesn't make sense, is flying at night in uncontrolled airspace. As long as you're away from airports, you can fly as a hobbyist at night. You gotta be extra careful. Okay, things look completely different at night, but it's actually legal to do this. As a remote pilot, you're gonna need to get a waiver to do it. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't. But well, things don't always make sense, unfortunately. Okay, let's take a quick break here. Get all this information in. We're going to talk about the process to become a remote pilot. Again, this is something that we can hear every single day. There's 5 steps. The first one is you need to get the knowledge that is contained in what we call the Airman Certification Standard. This is a document published by the FAA that says, in order to qualify for the remote pilot certificate, here's all the different topics that you should know. I think it's 60 pages for the ACR, the ACS. It may actually be a little bit more than that. So that's the first step. I'm going to pause because I see a question from Mike. I was wondering, as a hobbyist, can you fly over 400 safe? Oh, good question. Really good question, Mike. Mike is asking, he's saying, I'm going to add it right here so you guys can see it. Here's Mike's question. It says, I'm wondering if, as a hobbyist, you can fly over 400 feet, say, for example, a skyscraper. I'm not clear about that. And the answer is no. This is a really good question. This is something that is confusing because the regulation that you're talking about, Mike, is only contained in Part 107. It doesn't exist in the hobbyist regulation. So that's really not something that applies to hobbyists. I see this all the time. People say, well, I'm within 400 feet of this object, so I can fly 400 feet on top of it. That actually is not a regulation for hobbyists. So if you're a hobbyist, you're restricted to 400 feet above the ground, which is non-man-made structures. If there's a man-made structure, then you can't really do that. For Part 107, for remote pilots, something else that's always confusing is people think that they can use this rule, the 400-foot rule, anywhere. And the answer is no. If you're flying in controlled airspace, in LAANC, for example, you're going to be stuck to whatever altitude you have, AGL. You can't use the 400-foot rule in this case. So I'm glad you asked this, Mike. This is something that we get all the time, and a really, really good question. I'm going to try to remove this. Oh, remove from broadcast. Okay. Jake is asking, if I take the test and I don't pass, how long until I can? I'll talk about this, Jake, in a second when we talk about the remote pilot certificate here. Okay, Okay, let's get going. Number 2, step number 2 here, pass an FAA written exam with a score of 70 or more. So after you get the knowledge, you're ready to go, you take the exam with the FAA, you have to get at least 70. And then after this, you'll get a piece of paper that's going to have your score on it. And then you go into the IACRA website, IACRA, and then you're going to apply for the certificate on the website. This is free. The exam is not free, but applying for the certificate is free. And then after about 4 or 5 days, you're going to get a temporary certificate. It's a PDF. You can print it. And then there, you are legally a remote pilot, and you can start flying as a remote pilot. Passing the test is not enough, okay? Passing the test, you still have to do the application. And then after this, once you get the certificate, then the temporary certificate, then you're legal to fly. You'll get your actual certificate in the mail, the actual card, within 30 to 40 days. That's what the FAA has been doing. So in the meantime, you can still fly. You'll have a number on there that says pending. That's your certificate number for the first 30 days. And you can use that on application. So if anybody's asking you for your number, you just say basically pending, and then you're good to go. So people ask, what's the exam like? What does it look like? It's 60 multiple choice questions. There's 3 answers, only 1 possible question. Steve is here. Howdy, Steve. Welcome on board. The exam is 2 hours long. You have 2 hours to complete. Most of our students do it in about 45 minutes. Some people do it in less than 30 minutes because they really were prepared for the exam. It's computer-based, and then you'll get a book. And a book of figures, and this is one of the books right here. This is actually the one for the instrument rating, but it's the same concept. It basically has the figures inside. I don't know if you guys can see from the video right here, but in the question, it's going to say refer to figure 55. So you go in here, and then you look at figure 55 at the bottom right here, and here's the figure that you need to use. If you use our course to prep for the exam, we have the figures on the computer, so you can click on them, make them bigger and everything. But in real life, you're going to get this book to practice to do the exam. The rest of the test is on the computer, so you'll see all the questions. You can check them. You'll get the answer right away. I'll take that back. You'll get your results right away, so you won't know if you won't know which question you failed until the very end. And even then, they don't tell you exactly which question you failed. They just tell you which topic you failed. It's not open book. You have to you can't bring notes with you. Sorry, I got a brain fart for a second. You have to know your stuff. You can't bring any notes with you. They don't allow for that. And then you can only bring a simple calculator, no cell phone, no scientific calculator, no notes of any kind. And then make sure that you bring a magnifying glass. And this is my tip. If you take anything away from today's exam, I had another student a couple of days ago that said, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because he said I would have been lost otherwise. Because this book, you can't zoom on it. So if your vision is not all that great, then you're going to have to look on the charts, for example, and having the magnifying glass really helps. So this is my, my free tip for you guys. In terms of the topics, what are the topics on the exam? I go into a little bit of detail here. I'm not going to read all of them, but the first one, which is always surprising to students when they start the course, is loading and performance. And it's surprising because there is quite a few questions on here about fixed-wing aircraft. You may never fly a fixed-wing aircraft remotely, but there's a lot of questions about center of gravity and the location of the center of gravity, stalls, the load factor, a bunch of things that are rather confusing if you've never seen an airplane fly. So I actually go over all this obviously in our course, but there's questions about quadcopters and there's questions about fixed wing, and that always surprises students. And students go through the course and they're like, do I really need to know this? And the answer is yes, you actually do need to know this. There's a whole section about regulation, about Part 107. You need to know the regulation for Part 107. And then there's a section about airport operation and radio communication. And this is another one of these topics where people are like, do I really need to know this? I may never fly close to an airport. And the answer is yes, because even though you may never fly close to an airport, when you get the certificate, there's no restrictions on there. So the FAA says you can fly anywhere, even close to airports, so you need to be trained on how to do it in case it happens. So we're going to talk about runways, how runways are organized, we're going to talk about a traffic pattern. How do airplanes actually fly around the traffic pattern to get down to the runway? We're going to talk about airport signs. We're going to talk about how to listen on the radio. You cannot talk on the radio, but you can use the radio to get a lot of good information to help you figure out who else is in the area. So the purpose of all of this is to avoid colliding with an airplane, and it's a good reason. It's definitely something that you don't want to do. And then there's a whole section about airspace and charts, and this is the biggest section in the exam. At the very end, you're going to have questions about charts, sectional charts, how to read them, the different classes of airspace. You're going to talk about the height of the airspace. You're going to talk about the types of symbols on the chart. So I spend a lot of time, I spend several hours telling you about all of this in the course and how this actually works. And then there's a section about the weather. This is not students' favorite in general. The weather is pretty complex, I have to say. And this is, quite frankly, at this level, it's really just an introduction. If you ever do our private pilot course or our instrument or commercial course for airplane, you'll see what the weather is all about, because it's way more in depth in there. But the FAA wants you to read these reports, the METAR and the TAF. And if you're studying for this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's kind of a 1950s technology. It's all kind of coded in there, and it's something that you have to basically learn how to read. So we'll talk about the different types of fog, how the weather actually forms around you, so you can avoid getting into a situation where you're kind of in trouble. Predator says the exam is better, I'm guessing, than in Europe. Europe has an interesting way of doing certification as well. And then finishing the topics here, we have aeronautical decision making. This is kind of a big one, physiological factors as well. This is what the FAA is really big on when you do waivers. They're going to ask you a lot of questions about, are you doing risk management, risk assessment? Are you looking at hazard? So we're going to talk to you about all of this in the course, where we talk about how do you make proper decisions before you go fly? How do you identify risk? How do you identify hazards? And then also making sure you understand all the physiological factors that can impair you as a pilot. So things like drugs and alcohol, how is this going to affect your performance? Lack of sleep, and all of these things are in here. So lots of questions. Maintenance and emergencies. We'll talk about proper maintenance, and then dealing with batteries, and then emergencies. Emergency procedures, what should you do in case of an emergency? So this is all the things that are in the ACS, the Airman Certification Standard. These are things that the FAA wants you to be familiar with before you go take the exam. I have a question here. I'm going to take a break. So it says, sorry, should have started out saying good day. I'm a student already and really appreciate the awesome job done by all pilots. No, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Next question, okay, is, do you need a drone? This is something that we kind of answer on a daily basis. And the answer is, it's a good idea to have a drone, but you don't actually need one, which is sometimes surprising to people. The reason is you don't really have a practical exam to fly the drone. The FAA has decided that a written exam was the only thing that you needed, so you could get all the knowledge without having ever flown a drone. Do I recommend that you get one? Yes, absolutely. I think it's better if you've flown one before. You'll be able to relate a little bit more. You'll be able to understand airspace and all these things. So yeah, it's a good idea to have one. Next thing is, how much does it cost? The exam with the FAA, and it's not really with the FAA, but it's with a testing center that's approved by the FAA, is $160. That goes to the testing center. It's paid directly to them when you schedule the exam, and that's really your only cost. If you decide to do a school like ours, for example, then you have the additional fee on top of it. Ours is $149, so you're basically $310 investment at the end of all this. The testing center in itself, there's only one company that does testing for the FAA that's approved to do it, and that's going to be PSI. And PSI has testing centers all across the country. They have over 700 testing centers all around the country. And there's a link right here, fa.psiexams.com. If you go right there, you can actually see the list of testing centers near you, and then you can actually schedule your exam on the website as well. The test for this exam is called UAG, Unmanned Aircraft General. This is the first test that you have to do. So if you're looking for it in the list, this is going to be called UAG. And no, I answered this question, and so does Mark, our student service manager, every single day. It cannot be done online. It has to be done in person. The FAA does not allow to do the test online. And so when you're ready for it, schedule the exam. And people ask me, they said, when should I schedule the exam? And I always say, when you think you're ready. Don't schedule it too far ahead of time. We ask students typically to get 80% or more before on our practice test. We have practice tests in the course before they go and schedule the exam. This is just a way to make sure that you're ready. There's no reason to schedule it too far ahead in advance. It only takes a few days to get a date with the testing center. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Study. When you're ready to go, when you score 80, call the testing center and then get it done. This is just it's my free tip for you. How are you going to study for the exam? And of course I'm biased because I've been teaching this for several years now, and I've been teaching aviation for a long time. But there's three methods really. One is to self-study, one is to use videos on YouTube, and then one is to buy a course. Self-study, I can tell you, is difficult because you don't know what you don't know, and I love to tell this to people because it makes sense if you think about it. What do you have to study for the exam is in the ACS, but really when you start looking at the ACS, the Airman Certification Standard, there's going to be one line right here that says traffic pattern. How do you know that you've studied everything you need to know about traffic pattern? And so this is why we basically use this kind of method by using the course, because in the course we have looked at everything about traffic pattern, and this is what we teach you. So having done this for the last 20 years, I know what I need to teach you about traffic pattern. I don't need to go on YouTube or other places to find out that information. The FAA has quite a few books that are available to do the studying. So self-studying is possible. If you want to do this, it's going to take you, I think, quite a bit of time. We get people on a regular basis that come over and said, hey, I tried to self-study, I just couldn't do it, and then they enroll in the course and they're like, wow, this is so much easier. So again, I know this is a little bit biased, but this is the information. Somebody says, I got a bell, I want to say I'm hands-on, not a book learner, but the course has been awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for the great feedback. I really appreciate that. And then somebody says, Greg is the best. I'm reading this. This is, I swear, they're not making me say this. Somebody says, Greg is the best in the business, hands down. Well, thank you. Dirty South Drones. Awesome. Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate that. The next method that we can use is YouTube. YouTube has a lot of content available. I do like YouTube for a lot of things. The question that I always have on YouTube is the content really accurate? Who actually is teaching the content? Do you know the credentials for the person who's teaching? Again, you don't know what you don't know. So when you're looking at this, did you learn everything that you could have learned about traffic pattern, for example? So this is something that you have to take with a grain of salt. I like YouTube for videos that are one topic. Hey, how do I change the oil in my Volvo XC60? Then you go on YouTube and then you find a video right there. It's not always organized in a logical manner, especially for a topic as broad as Part 107. It's often difficult to find the information. And then also, is the content up to date? And this is something that's really big on YouTube is really the information, how old is the video that you're watching, and have things actually changed in the meantime. I see a lot of comments popping up right here. Jake said, I have several friends that are Part 107 that are helping me. That's awesome. He said, I'm thinking of giving you my money. Well, Jake, we have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so even if you don't learn anything, and after less than 30 days, if you don't like the course, you get your money back. So definitely give it a try. Craig says, coming up on the renewal recurrent exam, any comment? Craig, I'm going to talk about the recurrence in a second at the very end. There's a few things in here, and okay. So the next method, we have three methods: study by yourself, using YouTube, or you can use a study course. And quite frankly, any study course that works for you. I'm not here to sell you a product. I'm here to educate you on the process. We have a course. Other people have a course. Find one that works for you. This is like finding a wedding photographer. You want to find the one that fits your need and that teaches the way that you like. Okay. Not all courses are created equal. I can tell you that. Who is teaching the course? Do they have the credentials to be teaching the course, or is it just somebody who decided they're going to create a course? Are they just reading a teleprompter, or are they actually teaching the course? I pride myself to not read the teleprompter. You watch my videos, and once in a while I'm going to say, I'm going to correct myself, but I'm teaching you because I know the topic and I know what I need to teach you. I do have a teleprompter in front of me. I have my slides to kind of tell me, hey, this is the topic you need to talk about, and then I go and talk about it. Okay, so I find that people that read teleprompters usually don't have a good grasp on the knowledge, and then it kind of makes the course a little bit boring. But that's just my personal opinion. Is the course following the Airman Certification Standard? This is important. When you look for a study course, make sure that you find that they're teaching everything that you need to know, that they're not skipping some of the topics. And also, is it up to date? This is super important. There are changes to the regulation. As a matter of fact, right around the corner at the end of December, there should be a release by the FAA with new regulation. As soon as it hits the internet, then I'm going to have the course updated for you guys so you have the latest information. So make sure that it's up to date. Can you ask questions in the course? This is also important because you may watch a video and have questions. Is somebody going to answer your questions, or are you just watching a video right here? So I answer questions 3 times a day. When I wake up at 5 in the morning, when I take my lunch at noon, and then before I quit work, I go online and I answer the student questions. And I do this 7 days a week, so the questions are always answered in there. And then, are they teaching you to pass more than the test? Passing the test is one thing. Getting 70 on the Part 107 exam is not necessarily a goal. Okay, your goal should be to get over 90% on the exam and also learn something along the way. So I pride myself in teaching actually more than what's on the exam. Some people say, do I really need to know this? I said, not for the exam, but for real life. When you start flying, guess what? You're going to need to be familiar with all of this information right here. So I noticed that this is in the way. Sorry. There you go. So that's, let me see, before I move to the next thing here. Great education. Yeah, just a lot of people saying good stuff about us. Thank you, guys. How much studying? This is also a question that we get all the time. The FAA actually recommends 20 hours of studying time. Do you need 20 hours? I believe so. I've had many people that tell us after they pass the exam, and I ask how many hours did you actually study, and it's actually more than 20 hours. So you could do it in less, probably, if you just wanted to pass the exam. If you wanted to be proficient, more than 20 hours actually makes sense to me. Our course is 13 hours, and then by the time you're done reading some of the assignments, studying the flashcards, and then doing the practice exam and the quizzes and everything, you're going to be in for about 20 hours. So that number actually makes sense from the FAA. And then I think somebody asked the question here, I think it was Jake, what happens if you fail? You'll need to study some more. This is step number 1. You'll need to wait 14 days before you can take the exam again. So Jake, that was the answer to your question. And then you'll need to pay the fee again, $160. If you're one of our students, we guarantee that you pass the exam. So at this stage, we give you your money back for the course. So if you paid us $150, we'll give you $160 back, and then we'll pay for your retake. The reason we do this is because we know our method actually works, and quite frankly, I'll tell you the truth. How many people have failed using our course? At this stage, we're over 20,000 people now. We've had 5 failures ever, and out of these 5 failures, only 1 really was a true failure. The 4 other people failed because they didn't follow what we told them to do. They practiced using only the question bank. They never watched the videos. And so really we had only 1 failure ever that I know of, I should say, because people don't always tell us, but this person, these 5 did tell us that they had failed. So just kind of putting this out there. A few more slides and then we'll be done with, and then I'll open up for more questions. I want to make sure here, there you go. How long does the certificate last? And actually your certificate is good forever. This is something of a confusing thing with the FAA. The FAA issues a certificate and it's basically good forever. Same if you're an airplane pilot or a manned aircraft pilot, but you have to get current every 2 years. If you don't get current, it doesn't mean that your certificate expires. It just means that you can't exercise the privileges of your certificate. So every 2 years, you have to take a written exam with the testing center. Every 2 years, you do have to pay $160. Yes, unfortunately. The retake, the recurrent exam is only 40 questions instead of 60, and then some of the topics are not included. For example, the weather is not included. I know this is a topic that people don't like, so the weather is not included. There's a few more in there. But that has to be done every 2 years, every 24 calendar months, technically. So if you don't do the exam, if you don't retake the exam, then you can't be a remote pilot. You can't use your privileges to fly the drone until you do the exam, the recurrent exam again. Even if you let your first exam expire, then you have to redo the recurrent. You don't have to redo the initial every time. Let's talk about registration real quick before I give you my final thoughts. The drone in itself has to be registered. And there's two different methods here. As a hobbyist, if you're flying for fun, you basically register yourself. You're going to get a number. That number can be used for all of your drones. Now, I'm saying this now at the end of 2020. If this video is going to be recorded, if you're watching this video after 2020, it might be different because the FAA is coming up with remote ID, and they had proposed that hobbyists register every single one of their drones in the future. So when that regulation changes, I'll keep you guys posted. As a remote pilot, you have to register every single one of the drones that you're going to be flying as a hobbyist, as a remote pilot, sorry. It's $5, okay? Don't get roped into the scams that are going on out there where they charge you $30, $40, $50, $60 to register your drone. It's $5. You do it yourself on the FAA Drone Zone website. It's the only place. If you don't see .gov at the end of the address, then you're in the wrong place. So the droneregistration.net, whatever that website, or there's several of them, don't go there. Those are scams, and they'll take your money and then not do anything for you. So $5 per drone as a remote pilot, $5 as a hobbyist for you as a person, and it's valid for 3 years. So every 3 years you have to do this. And then I'm trying to read, make sure I covered everything. You have to print your own registration. The FAA does not send you stickers. It's not like your car and your license plate. You don't get a license plate. I print them using a label maker, and I just put them on the side of my drone. It has to be put on the outside of your drone. Don't put them in the battery compartment. It has to be visible from the outside. I see there was a question that popped up. Steve says, I will have to finish later. I have to get back to work. Great information. I'll look further into the course. Cool. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for stopping by. And Morning View is saying, I think the FAA charging a $5 tax is a scam. Yeah, well, it's a requirement. The good thing is it's only $5. It could be a lot worse. Think about your car registration. It could be a lot more than that. So $5 every 3 years is actually not too bad of a deal, I think. So that's it really for the registration. In terms of my final thoughts, this is kind of my sales pitch if you want to do this. I'm not really good at selling stuff, but basically we have a course. You guys know this already. I talked about it a little bit. It's $149. You get the entire 13 hours of video. I'll teach you not only how to pass the test, but you'll be proficient by the time you're done, I can guarantee you. And then lifetime access. You can use it for renewal purposes. And then we have practice questions, so over 300 practice questions. You can practice as many times as you want in there. We have a flashcard app that you can use on your phone, on your iPad, on Android phones as well. And then we do scenario-based training. So we have also a free 3-hour companion course that comes with the course. I don't believe in only passing an FAA written exam. So I also teach you how to fly the drone. So there's 50 maneuvers that I created that you can practice to get better at flying. And this is something that I actually enjoy doing because you go out, you take the drone, and instead of just flying around and farting around, then you just basically go and practice skills. So I created all these different maneuvers, and they get from very simple to very complex. And it's actually, I think it's a fun way to do it. So you'll learn not only the knowledge, but you'll learn how to fly as well. And We have other courses. We have a Drone Flying 101 if you want to learn just the basics as a hobbyist. I have a course where I teach you how to start your drone business. And then we have a course not taught by me, but by Don Eon. He's experienced drone builder. He's built over 100 drones, and he shows you how to build an FPV cinematic drone. And it's really neat. And then we have free courses as well, deep dive courses. You can learn how to fly the Mavic Air 2. What I did is we took the user manual, and then I made it into a video user manual. So if you hate reading the user manual, these courses are free. I put them out there for free because I want you guys to learn how to safely fly. And this is not about money. This is about making sure that everybody's safe flying out there. So these courses, you can find them on our website, pilotinstitute.com. And we just released a mini course, the deep dive series, and then we're working on the mini 2 course as well. So that's going to be coming out. I actually recorded it yesterday, and so that's going to be coming out soon. Learn everything about how to use the drone, the kind of the fine print that you find in the manual. Everything is in there. All right, well, I'll shut up for now. Any questions that you guys may have, please leave them in the comments. I'm available about anything. Airplanes, drones, I do it all. I love doing this. Jake says, I love your video on the Mavic Air 2. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, this course has been very popular. Lots of people very happy with the detail. You know, I kind of wish sometimes when I started that I had a course like this. This is why I build these courses, is because I want to, I made some mistakes, just like everybody else. I started flying with the Phantom 1, the very original Phantom that didn't even have a camera on it. You just flew the thing around. It didn't have GPS, and very kind of a little bit more difficult to fly. And then I've seen this whole thing evolve into what it is today. So really exciting. But yeah, ask your questions. Don't hesitate if you have them. I'm pretty much done with this presentation. So any other questions you have, just let me know. You can find us, pilotinstitute.com. Every week we put out a news update on Friday, every Friday morning. I go over what I read. I read the news for drones every week during the week when I drink my tea in the morning. And then I take notes, and then I create kind of a wrap-up every week on Friday. So you can basically go in there and get up to date. It's about 10-15 minutes long every week, and I kind of go over no blah blah, no droning on and on. I just kind of give you the information as it is. Dirty South Drone says, do 107.29 waiver cover a single mission only, or blanket coverage for longer duration? So typically all the waivers out there, let me put this one on the broadcast here so you guys can see. Typically what happens is the waivers are good for several years. Any of the waivers out there are good for several years. So you'll have the ability. Mine, I think, was good for 3 years, my 107.29 waiver. And so you apply, you're going to get approval to fly in uncontrolled airspace. And then if you want to fly in controlled airspace, then you'll need to apply for a wide area authorization with the FAA. And then they'll let you fly in controlled airspace during the day and at night as well. So that's a good way to do it. I hope this answers your question. Another question from Morning View. I have a question. When the FAA changes everything next year, will your material cover the new requirement for the same price? Yeah, absolutely. No new fees. You get access to the course. You get free updates for the entire course. So, this is part of keeping the course up to date. The regulation changes. This is what I do. This is my job. So I make sure that you guys don't have to chase the information around. I'll give you the most updated information. Actually, we were going to create a new course this winter, but we block the Christmas break and the area around this time because we think that's when the FAA is going to release the information so that we can go through the courses and update all the courses and give you all the information. So Morning View, yes, everything will be in the course for free, no additional charge. Jake says, if I'm with somebody that has a Part 107 certificate and we go to a job to make money, am I able to make money if I'm with them? That's a good question, Jake. The answer is yes, if. So there's a few ifs here. Somebody that has a Part 107 certificate can supervise your operation as long as they're not flying a drone themselves. So they have to be dedicated to you. So you can fly, they can be next to you, and basically supervising and ready to take over the controls, and then you basically using their certification to do this. So yes, it is possible to do this. If they're flying themselves and you're flying as well, then it doesn't work. They have to dedicate their attention to your activity. So I hope that answers your question. And then OOC Property Services says, keep up the good work and thanks, you do make a difference. Oh, thanks, appreciate that. Always like the comments from you guys. I know somebody had a question, Craig had a question. Sorry, Craig, I didn't really get to that. So coming up on the recurrent exam, any comment? I would say for the recurrent exam, study the charts. The charts is going to be the main topic that you'll find on the exam, but that's not the only thing. You know, all the other topics are in there. If you have a course, if you have our course, you can go through the exam, the original course, and then I'll tell you what to skip. So I'll tell you which video you can skip, and then and which apply to the recurrent exam. So we didn't create a separate course. We're using the same course because the knowledge is really the same. You just skip a few things. If you have a course with somebody else, you can probably do the same thing. I don't know how how our competitors are doing this. Mike says, a lot of good information. I'm going to get the 107 just in case I ever need it. I'll definitely use your course. Glad I caught your live stream. Awesome, Mike. You know, this is a good idea, quite frankly. I know I'm biased a little bit, but get your 107. Even if you don't plan on making money with your drone, you'll be educated. You'll be able to fly in areas that you can't fly as a hobbyist. It's really not that much of a cost. Think about the initial cost of a course, about $150. And then $160 every 2 years. So that's $80 every year to do the recurrent. And then if you think about it, actually the FAA is talking about changing the recurrent stuff. They're going to let you do some webinars, maybe like a webinar like this, in order to get points. And this is something they do for pilots at the moment, for manned aircraft pilots. It's not finalized just yet, but I can guarantee you within a year or two, you won't have to pay $160 again to renew it. So it even makes even more sense in this case. Storm Tracker Shane Helton is saying, a company that I work for bought an expensive course for us to study. It was trash. Yeah, well, that's, you know, I've mentioned this before. I've mentioned that not all courses are created equal. And unfortunately, sometimes expensive courses are not all that they're cracked up to be. So I hate to hear that because there are other courses that are good out there. Obviously, ours, I think, is good. I'm biased, but I think other courses are pretty good as well. Like I said, this is like finding a wedding photographer. Find one that works for you. My teaching style may not be the perfect teaching style for you. That's fine. I live with it, but we get good ratings. Most people really enjoy our course, so I go with that. Shane, if you want to send us an email, we'll give you a break on trying our course. So if your company wants to do that, I'm happy to help them. Any other question? So I don't ramble on and on. Ryan says, man, you're a beast. Thanks. Not a big guy, but I went flying a couple days ago, flying the Mini 2. I haven't posted this video. Those of you that follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, I've posted a couple videos about the Mini 2. I went flying the Mini 2 with the original Mini battery because they fit, and I wanted to see how long I could fly with it. And so I did a little testing, the Mini original with the original battery, and then the Mini 2 with the original battery, and I went and flew them. So we're editing the video right now. We'll have it posted pretty soon. And then and I did the test of the Mini 2 versus the Mavic Air 2, because the Mavic Air 2 has a 34-minute battery life compared to 31 minutes. So I took a look and see the difference. Now I live at 5,000 feet of elevation, so the battery life is usually a little bit shorter. It was an interesting test, so if you want to see the video, it's going to be coming out soon. Craig is saying, can you say something about registering a drone as Part 107 versus registering as a hobbyist? If your drone is registered as Part 107, also good when hobbyist? Yes, good question. That's actually, so I talked briefly about this right here. Where's my registration stuff? Oops, let me find it. It's right here. So, Craig, if you register as a Part 107, it is also valid as a hobbyist, okay? I want to make that clear that out of the way right now. And then in terms of registering the drone, as you can see right here on the slide, as a hobbyist, you register yourself. As a remote pilot, you register each drone that you're going to fly. So if you're flying a Phantom 4 and then a Mavic 2 Pro, then you're going to register these two as a remote pilot, $5 for each, valid for 3 years. But if you also have an hotel Evo 1, for example, that you just fly as a hobbyist, then you don't need to register that as commercial. You basically just use your hobbyist registration, and it's good for all those drones. So I hope that answers your question, Craig, right here. Drone Drifter says, great information as always. Keep up the good work. Thanks. Appreciate that. And then we have Will's Design says, do you have a resource or tip to find what local municipal code determine if you can fly for certain location? Man, this is really a good question, Will's, right here. And quite frankly, I wish there was a resource out there to find all the municipal codes. For those of you that are not familiar, the FAA controls the airspace, but local government, such as at the state level or even as at the municipality level, can add restriction as to where you can take off and land with your drone, which makes things complicated. And sometimes they think, local governments think, that they can actually also restrict the airspace, which they can't. Only the FAA can restrict the airspace. But I live in Prescott. Luckily, Prescott is really good about this. They could have a location where they say no drone flying from this park, and at that point there's nothing you can do. You cannot take off, you cannot land from the park property because they are in control of that. Can you overfly the park? Absolutely. From a legal standpoint you can, but if you're flying and taking off from the park, they can actually fine you for doing that. So Wills is asking if there's a location for finding all of this, and there really isn't. So what you need to do is you need to go to the park's website if they have one. You need to look for signs around the park that says no takeoff and landing. My guess is if you're not allowed to do it, there's going to be a sign. I hope there's going to be a sign to tell you that you can't. But otherwise, it's really very specific to each location. National parks, you cannot fly in national parks. And then what we call wilderness areas that are recognized as wilderness areas, you cannot fly in those either. So you have to be cognizant of all this. I'll tell you something that I see online. Can you fly, this is a question I see, can you fly to a national park if you're taking off from outside a national park? The answer is legally, yes, you can. Because you can doesn't mean you should, okay? Because you can doesn't mean you should. So I would not personally fly from outside a national park into a national park. You have to keep visual line of sight. You can't fly over people. You have to keep that in mind. The reason I wouldn't do it is because there's a reason you can't fly over national parks. National parks are designed to be peaceful areas for a lot of wildlife. I know people go in there sometimes to relax as well. Last thing I want to see is a bunch of drones flying around. So this is just my personal opinion. Legally, you can do it, but I hate giving our industry a bad reputation. So that's just my recommendation. We have Predator India Tango says, in the US, do you have a beyond visual line of sight grade? We have waivers to fly. So BV loss, beyond visual line of sight. I'm going to put the question up right here so you can see it. There you go. In the US, to fly beyond visual line of sight, you need to have a waiver. So you can do it under Part 107, under your remote pilot certificate, and then get a waiver to fly. It's pretty difficult to get because it requires special technology on board the drone, including sense and avoid technology and all of that. So not very easy to get. The FAA is working on new regulation, which should be posted in December, in a month actually. This is November. And we'll have more information about the new process to do that. So ask me that question again in a month, and I should have a different answer. And you said because this is the frontier for commercial use. Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree that beyond visual line of sight is the next step, and the FAA knows that as well. And this is why remote ID has been pushed so quickly, because it is a big part of the component to make this happen. So does UTM, unmanned traffic management. The concept of UTM relies a lot on beyond visual line of sight becoming more routine rather than being an advanced operation. So Ryan says, The instruments you're talking about is the IMC. Yeah, that's the instrument course that we have for pilots. It's instrument rating for pilots. We have a private pilot course as well, and we have an instrument course as well. So there's no instrument course for drones yet, because the FAA doesn't allow you to fly in IMC conditions. But maybe one day, I'm sure we will get there. You know, I was telling students the other day, the drone industry is on week one of when the Wright brothers started flying. If you think about the timeline of when the Wright brothers did the first flights, we're at the infancy of this, or maybe month number one. We have a lot of progress to make, and there's a lot of things that are going to change in the next couple of years. So this is why it's such an interesting industry to me, because things change all the time and evolve, hopefully, in the right direction. We'll see in December if that's the case or not. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. I didn't. Oh, there's another question. Okay, just a bunch of thumbs up from Predator India Tango. And any other questions? I can talk about this all day, so bring them on. I enjoy doing this stuff. And if not, we're just going to end. Oh, I guess we've been going for an hour. Well, I'm glad I didn't plan for more slides. This video will be recorded, so it'll be available. If you have questions, if you're watching this video after it went live, just drop your question down at the bottom, and then we'll answer the questions. We do this all the time. And I think this is it. I think this might be all the questions. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate seeing all you guys. I see familiar faces. This is awesome. I see you guys making comments on a regular basis when I do the news update. So keep up all the questions. I love our followers. We can have intelligent conversations on YouTube in the comment section, which if you go on YouTube or even on Facebook, you know it's a difficult thing to do these days. But our followers are always really on par. Don't always agree with your point of view, but I always appreciate that you bring it up and that we can discuss. So Mike has a question. Here in North Carolina, along with the 107, you have to have a state certificate. Yes, absolutely. North Carolina and Minnesota are, so far as I know, the only two states that also require a certificate at the state level in order to make money with your drone. So if you're flying in North Carolina, even if you don't live there, but if you're flying there for commercial purposes, make sure you go on the North Carolina DOT website, Department of Transportation, and do this. Wills is saying, can you tell us what you heard about the upcoming test for recreational flyers? Good question, Wills. Thanks for asking this one. Yes, from my discussions with a few FAA employees, they are trying to push for the test to be done by December. I'm having doubts at this stage that this is actually going to happen in December, but I know they're closer than they've ever been, which is probably something you can say every day about anything, but I know they're working hard at it. I know the people that are behind the exam are really good people at the FAA. They are drone pilots as well. I know they're trying. As you can imagine, the FAA is a nightmare in terms of paperwork, just like any government agencies. And I'm not dishing the FAA, but this is really at this level that's the problem. So we will see. I believe by the end of this year or very early in 2021, we will see an exam for recreational pilots. From what I hear, it will be online. It will be very simple. The price, I'm not sure yet, but looking at what other countries are doing, I'm guessing it's either going to be free or very cheap, like $5 registration. I may be out of my head on this one, over my head on this one, but we'll see. That's going to be my guess. And then it's going to be online. You'll be able to take it online and be ready to go. So I think the FAA is really trying to educate people before they go up. Don't think about it as a Part 107 exam. Think about it as an educational course that people have to take, print a certificate that says, yeah, I've got the information, I understand I shouldn't be flying here, and then go up and fly. I don't really like that it's called an exam. I think it should just be an educational course, quite frankly. And that's how we should look at it. I think it's not a bad thing. I think people need to be educated when they fly in the airspace. So I hope that answers your question, Wills. Niha says, do I have to take any course apart from Part 107? No, that's really the only course. If you want to use a course, then that's the only course you need to take. and then you'll be ready to go. So Mike B says, thank you, Greg. Appreciate all the info. Well, look forward to seeing you as the first commenter on the video next time. So Mike says, enjoyed it. Predator India Tango says, thanks for the explanation regarding BVLOS. Here in Europe, we will start again with BVLOS grade certification. Yeah, so the FAA is working on type certification for drones, which is going to be related to BVLOS. So if you want to fly, my guess from what I've read is if you want to fly BVLOS, you'll have to have a type certified drone, which is I think what you're talking about with grade certification. So same idea here. And then Targab Australia says, hello everyone from the east coast of Australia. I'm guessing it's really late in Australia right now. I don't actually know the time difference, but I'm guessing probably pretty late. Or very early, one of the two. Okay, any other questions you guys have? If not, then I'll end it right here. Like I said, like I started saying, leave your comment down in there. I'll answer them as well as I can. And then I look forward to interacting with you guys. So I think this is going to be it. You guys have a great day. It's Wednesday. Got a couple more days. Thanksgiving right around the corner. Be safe out there. If you're not in the US, be safe as well. If you have to travel anywhere. And then hope to talk to you very soon. So signing off. See you guys.